welcome to another edition of the NCBI Podcast. I'm June Tinsley, Head of Communications and Advocacy with NCBI. And today with me is Tina Lowe, who is UCD's Accessibility Officer and also a service user of NCBI. So thanks very much, Tina, for taking the time to have a chat with us.
Thank you very much, June, for asking me. It's a pleasure.
Great. And I suppose for the benefit of our listeners, if you can tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so my name is Tina Lowe. I live in Shankill, County Dublin. I'm 56 and I lost my sight at age 27 out of the blue, and no one really knows why, but it could have been viral meningitis or something very rare called benign intracranial hypertension. And that basically, what it means is I got fluid on the brain and it caused optic nerve damage and loss of hearing, smell and power down on my left hand side, which I regained to a degree, but I never got my sight back because optic nerves, as you know, and I'm sure your listeners know, are unfortunately buried in the back of the head and the base of the skull. So to date, there's no surgery. So I'm blind now since 27. I'm 56. So I say I'm nearly more years blind than sighted by 2. So obviously my whole life changed. I started off it was a very strange, acquiring blindness at that age it was unreal and very difficult. And honestly, I certainly didn't want to stick around. But basically what happened was I had a lot of brain surgery. I was very sick. I had to be at home again, having lived in Spain abroad independently and having been married. And I had to start again at home, and it was awful. And after about 6 months, I heard about a course in the National Council for the Blind. It was called Foundation Skills. And I begged to get on it because I couldn't sit at home any longer. My mother got me an assistant, so-called assistant. My mother was a school teacher. And I think thanks to her getting me that person who was absolutely horrendous, I decided I'm out of here, more or less, which was good. Yeah. So actually it worked. And the other thing that was funny with me was I honestly was terrified of dogs all my life, to the point of jumping on tables, running across the road at the risk of getting knocked down. And that was the other thing. People were saying, oh, you can get a guide dog. And I was like, no, I can't, because I'm terrified. Plus, in the beginning, you say, oh, I'm not blind, I'm getting my sight back. But then I started the foundation course in the NCBI, and I have to say, you could write a comedy book, even though it's not funny. Like, it was actually brilliant. But at one stage, I always remember doing waltzing and with a blind fella called Mark, I swear, yeah, with 2 amazing women who were hilarious. They were the yoga teachers. Topsy, I think, was one of them. And it was just unreal. And they used to ask us to sit in a circle, and we were all, say, adults who had acquired blindness. We were various things, like very traumatic. There was car accidents, there was desperate stuff, and we were real bold. Like, you do go back to being a kid. So we're like, what do you mean? We don't know where the circle is, do we? So it was all that kind of thing. So it was loads of attitude. So I always think the teachers were, God bless them, they were amazing. But the best crack ever was ballroom dancing with Mark. I don't know where Mark is now, but I swear to God, it was comedy of ours. But honestly, I know it's not funny for some people who don't, if they're going through it, whatever, but it was some of the times that were funny. I mean, one of the things we did regularly was stand outside, because those were the days when you could still smoke. Yeah, right? Yeah. And we were outside, and one of this woman, Margaret from Ennis, and myself would be out there trying to light our smokes. Margaret had long hair, so she regularly singed her hair and her eyebrows. And like, I swear, you just don't give up. You still try to do everything. And then, it was just, so there's lots of those things. And then we learned, say, how to use the computers, which was useful, to type. It was unbelievable. We had to start from scratch, how to put your clothes on a line, how to cook, because you're basically like a 2-year-old. You can't do anything again without help, because you've never been blind. You don't know what it is. It's a whole new world. And then the biggest part for me, which I found awful, and that's why I spent my life every day trying to improve, the rights of the people. Because the first thing you notice is, first of all, you're not really in the room. So everyone says, is she okay? She's great. Or does she want any help? Or, all this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And then the first time I went to Dunn's with my sister, I can see a tiny bit of colour, blue and yellow, bright colours in my left eye, right? So I banged into a bin and I thought it was a person, I said, excuse me. So it's not really funny, but it is. It isn't when you're,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
my sister knew me as Tina. So she was like, oh, don't make a show of me, so all that kind of thing. But that was all the early days. And then, I kind of I went through a lot of, I'd say you're angry at the world. You're not angry at you. It's not really the world. It's the way the people treat you, or the way things are not accessible, or the way that you suddenly become invisible. So I started off, I did the NCBI, which actually was great. And then I did a computer skills then I joined a communities employment scheme, and it was called trying to be artist and repertoire. I'm not messing. It was a business skills course, and it was actually one of the teachers in the NCBI, Karen Ward,
right,
who encouraged me to do it. And I was looking at her going, what? And she said, look, you can do it. You can hear. You can. You'd love it. You've got a good personality. Use what you can.
Yeah.
And then Blonde, who was another trainer, amazing trainer, Blonde Gallagher, I think her name. She used to say to me as well that it's not all over. And I'd be like, yeah, right. And then I met this blind man, Joe Ballard, who's still alive. God bless him. He's in his late 80s I don't know how many guide dogs. And he said to us in the beginning in the class, no matter what, say thank you, right? And I was looking at him and going like real bold. And I was actually really good in school. So I turned into your worst nightmare of Bart Simpson, right? And I'm looking at him going, why? And actually it has helped. You have to kind of swallow your pride. Sometimes it's, you want to you get over the part where people think you're in it. You're not an inspiration, but you're to people who don't understand, and they see you being able to do things without your sight. They do think you're an inspiration.
Yeah.
Now, I am not an inspiration, but the way I look in life is, and I met a lot of blind people, and I went skiing with the NCBI. Again, I never would have done that because I had a fear of heights, and also, how can you do that? But, you meet lots of other people. And I remember, I think his name was Donald Fitzpatrick. He's a blind man I think he works in DCU. And he said to me, I always remember, he said, it's very harsh, Tina, but basically you have two choices. You sink or swim. And that's how this is Donald now, years into blindness. That's how he coped. And I kind of was thinking, well, at the time, yeah, right. But it gets to you, and you kind of grow into it. And believe it or not, then you have to try 200% all the time to try and improve everything. So everything takes much longer. It's much harder. But if you kind of get into the groove, now I am convinced, no matter what people say, people who are born blind are not the same in any way. I really don't think they are. I think they don't have all the things, say, the stuff that every day I'm thinking, I want to give out about it, loads of stuff. They are.
Well, their circumstances are different. They don't necessarily.
They're born into say,
a
chill. That's the way they are. So they don't have to worry or think about as much. Now maybe I'm wrong, but I've found that it's good in lots of ways because they are self-contained. I'd say, This is their life, and they're very happy in that lot. In some ways, in other ways, they're not. I'm only talking generally, and I could be very wrong. But what I'm saying is just my experience, only my experiences, that I see that, and then it's good for me because I learn from people.
Yeah.
Who were I went to rehab to Roslyn Park College to a computer skills for blind people, and it was fantastic because most of the people in my class were born blind, and they were a whole new, positive, different way of doing things. I learned loads from them. I had good crack with them.
Yes.
We had fun it was, I could stop worrying, the kind of way. And and then it was a really good experience. And because the new Tina was like Bartina Simpson, I used to challenge deaf people, which is very shocking anyway, in Roslyn, because they'd be in our way and we'd be trying to top down with canes and they'd be doing their sign language in a huddle, and I'd be like, excuse me, out of the, so I had to have meetings and all for. It was funny. I kind of turned into what I probably wanted to be when I was a kid, bold, whereas I was really good in school, well behaved. But anyway, so I did all that, and so then I went on, and I did a great thing called a PUC course in Roslin, which is doing your Leaving Cert again using screen readers, or adaptive technology, right? And I did my Leaving Cert again, and I did really well the second time because I was much more focused. I wanted to go to UCD, and I wanted to go when I was 18, but I didn't get a chance. I went on and wanted to work and make money to buy nice clothes. So I went as a mature student when I did that course, and it was the best thing I ever did because I was there as a student. So when you're a student anywhere, you can do what you like and you can say what you like. Yeah. You're a free agent and you can learn stuff and you can be focused because you're older. And then what I did was I used to be really nice to the mature students who sat at the front of the theatre. And I say, is there any chance you could take the notes, or, and it worked. And I had loads of help. And those were the days when no one will believe it now, but we had 80,000 boxes of tapes. I refused to learn Braille because I was, I couldn't, and I was being bold in the Braille class, cheating in the Braille class. And the teacher caught me in Donna Lang. I swear, I was letting on. I knew what page I was on, and everyone in the class was hinting. I swear I got away with it for about 3 pages. And then said, show me your book. And I handed it over, said, you're not even on the right page. And I'm going, I know, I'm sorry. Anyway, that was years ago. So I never learned Braille. And so I had 80,000 boxes of books in my room. I lived on the campus and I had a PA. And it was brilliant. And it was great crack and great as a maturity because you're not as nervous, and you kind of have a good time, and it was brilliant. And I did really well, and I did Portuguese because I had joined a samba band, and when being my experience of blindness is I did like languages, but now I can remember them and get the accent better because I love it, and I'm not reading, and it's not hard because you can do it on the spot. And so I did Portuguese, and I had lived in Spain, so I could speak kind of street Spanish, and so I had to study it, but I did well enough in Portuguese to win a scholarship to get a month in a university. It was the Institute of Camões in Lisbon, and there's 2 people got it, and I got it because I had a great tutor, and they thought I was great because I was willing to learn Portuguese, which is much more difficult than Spanish because they get really annoyed at Spanish people because they try and take off the Portuguese by adding an O, or putting on a Sean Connery accent. It's like shama. Anyway,
and
so
Tina,
basically,
in terms of the, I'm sure
that's how I got to UCD, and then I got a job in a head, started working in the employment areas, getting get ahead, and then wham, willing, able, and mentored, and got jobs for people because that was the thing that struck me most. That there's no point in getting a degree if you can't get a job.
True. And I suppose that wealth of experience that you have brought to your current role certainly must help an awful lot of current students. And I suppose my curiosity really is in connection with your current role as accessibility officer. What are the most common issues or barriers?
Okay, well, say in accessibility, what we're doing in UCD is we're trying to make an enormous campus, which is built over 360 acres. Since building since the 18th century up to date. And now there's a whole load of new buildings, which are amazing technology and accessibility wise, because they're right up to date. But there's also really old buildings and the buildings that were originally done in the 60s. So what we're trying to do is gradually, we put in, say, sliding doors so you can get into the building, tactile markings so you can find where the steps are, accessible bathrooms so that people can use the toilet, right? Signage that's accessible. We have things that you put on the windows that are so that you can see there isn't a shine. Some people with partial sight or for whatever reason, so they don't smack into the windows. And we're trying to make accessible lifts, stairwells. We closed in the stairwells where there were gaps because it was really dangerous. We put the tactile markings at the end of each step. So we're trying to do a lot of stuff that's very basic, but it really helps people. And then we've made improvements on the outside of buildings by leveling off uneven footpaths, resurfacing. We use a surface called Ballylusk all the time, which is accessible for wheelchair users and walkers. My project the last few years was building a sensory trail, which we've done 4 now, which is aimed at outdoors for everybody, especially people with sensory or people who are neurodivergent, to have spaces where they can actually get to sit by the lake by making the area accessible. And the surfaces and seating and the sounds, and that's a really nice project. But the buildings are mainly trying to make sure that the entrances are accessible, because that's a big thing. People build stuff and they forget about the doors, and there's steps up. So we're trying to get all that, and then we're also putting it into the policy and procedure of UCD's estate services, which they're doing. And so they have an interactive map, and they have, they're taking it on, and it's brilliant because the changes are amazing and I think once you get the buy-in as well from the people you work with, which we have fantastic estate services. I work with them, and they're just it's brilliant, it's working well now. It's taken a long time, like it isn't instant, so that's what we do. So,
and Tina, would you reckon, because of the investment and the buy-in, as you rightly say, of the university campus, would you rate UCD as probably one of the most accessible in Ireland?
No, because I wouldn't, but I would say that, the whole thing about accessibility is, as you know, it's kind of newish to buildings. It's newish. It is in health and safety and building regulations for a while. But I think what I would say is that we're creating, slowly but surely, we're making a much more accessible campus than we ever had.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And you see, because UCD is, as you know, it's built all over, it's a huge campus. There's lots of different buildings that were built in different eras as well.
Yeah.
And accessibility wasn't part of it at all. So that's what we're dealing with. We're trying to renovate or retrofit. But with the newer buildings, what we do all the time is we try to make sure that we get accessibility consultants externally to oversee the drawings and the floor plans, so that they're not just saying they're making it accessible, because people do say, I put in a ramp, but it could be the wrong measurement. So no, I wouldn't say that, but I'd say we're really trying, which is brilliant. And I'd say that, compared to, we'd say we have some fantastic buildings like the Student Centre, which won an award for accessibility. That's amazing. That, where the swimming pool is, and it's brilliant, and it's really accessible, but it's also, the people who work there are really aware, and it's really helpful. Like, you can use a gym, for example.
Yeah.
Anyone who's got any disability, including blind people, guide dogs, you can go there and use the facilities. Like, they have much better support, and they're really aware. And I think by the whole thing about anything like a university is, the more and more people we get, especially blind people with guide dogs. We've one new person this year now with a guide dog student, and that's brilliant. I'd love loads of people to come, because the more you come, the more people learn, and the more things change for the better, because people have to support you under the law, so they can't refuse support. And when you're a student, honestly, it's the best time you'll ever have to be assertive, vocal, and get what you want.
True, which are essentially life skills anyway. So it's important. And I suppose the other thing I just wanted to chat with you about there, Tina, is your own podcast called the Blind Spot, and just to ask you kind of what motivated you to start, and going by the various topics that you've discussed on the podcast. Is there any particular guest or topic that you've learned most?
Well, we started it. We did it a year ago. We did a course, and I worked with a lecturer in Smurfit Business School, and we did some presentations, and he was really up for me and my campus accessibility to learn how to do a podcast. And so I did. He sent us on the course, and it was brilliant, and it's only short. And so we started it off, and we used the Quinn Business School studio, We had an editor who was a student, and it was just brilliant. And the topic I picked, which is what I'm always talking about, and people call me Jimmy Rabbit, for example, or stop lecturing, because it's in my head all the time, is accessibility to everything, not just to buildings, but to culture, to awareness, to everything. So that's what we did. So I wrote the kind of scripts. I got the guests. I knew most of them, and I knew they'd be able to talk, because you need people who can talk on a podcast. You can't do silences, especially if you're blind, right? And anyway, so we did all that, and it was brilliant, and I loved it. And the thing I learned the most about, which is something that I'm really interested in now, is because some of my relations have what would have been called Asperger's or autism, but it's now, we call it neurodiversity. So I had a good few guests on, and I learned a huge amount, and that's really opened my mind to stuff. So that was my favorite. But I had some great ones. Like I had Dublin Bus, and we went back to the days of when things were different, and it's been a great one. And we, I really enjoyed making it, and I'd love people to listen, because obviously I don't know how, well, not obviously, but I don't have loads of money. I don't have any money. I don't do social media, so I don't know how to do any of that stuff. But it is very easy to listen to. It's actually quite funny, some of it. It's not real serious. And the topics are amazing, and you do learn stuff if you're in this area, So.
Yeah, it's very diverse. And for the benefit of our listeners, what's the best way you would suggest in accessing it? The blind.
Well, it's on Spotify, or it's on Apple, the Apple app, podcast app. It's probably on loads of other things, but that's what I know. And it's I have a website as well. It's called The Blind Spot with Tina Lowe, and it's but Spotify, which is, I think most people listen to,
would be familiar
the
with
most young'uns, as I call them. Young'uns. Anyone under 30, I keep calling kids, which is shocking, but there you go.
Well, as I said, just to conclude there, I'm going to ask you the same question I ask all my guests, which is what one piece of advice would you give to another person recently diagnosed with a sight loss condition? And you've mentioned probably a little bit of this already earlier.
Okay. Well, I'd say honestly, the hardest. Okay, so the biggest thing is, right, it's not going to come easy, and it's not going to take. It's not instant, but what you have to do is just kind of. I would honestly say, having looked back at that now, I'd say, love yourself, be kind to yourself, and just mind yourself, because it's awful. That's the truth, The beginning, the early days, nothing will ever be able to help you to cope unless it happens to you. But just say, in the early days, make sure you're in a nice, kind of happy, warm place with your friends that really, and your family that support you, and just take it easy on yourself. And then, there are a huge amount of supports, and thankfully nowadays technology is going to really help you. But I would say that's the biggest thing. And then the other thing I would say, honestly, from being someone who is terrified of dogs, the best thing I ever did was get a guide dog, because it's not only guiding you, it's your best friend. So there you go.
And what's the name of your guide dog?
Forrest, Forrest. He's my third one, and he has an Instagram, Forrest UCD. I swear, he's gigantic. He looks like a bear, but he's actually a dog. So, yeah. So that's what I would say. And to be honest,
Good advice. And obviously any listeners can check out Forrest's Instagram page as well.
Yeah.
Keep up to date with everything that Tina's up to.
Well, I'm not, because I can't see it, but there you go. He's a rock star, but I don't mind, because he's still my guide dog. So yeah.
Good. And he's as loyal to you as ever, despite his fame.
Absolutely, yeah. He has to be, because I feed him.
Exactly. He knows where the priorities lie, in fairness.
Exactly. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah, very good. Yeah.
Well, listen, Tina, I'll let you go, and thank you very much for taking the time to have a chat with us this afternoon.
No problem at all. It was really enjoyable, and thank you.
No problem. And as always, if any of our listeners want to access NCBI services, feel free to jump onto the website, ncbi.ie, or call our info line 1-800-911-250, where you can check out Tina yourself on the Blind Spot podcast, accessible from Spotify and other channels. But for now, thank you very much, Tina.
Thank you very much.